Welcome back to The Ed Show, and thanks for watching tonight. In 2010, the last election cycle, Republicans took complete legislative control of 21 states, and ALEC was right there to help them push through a radical right-wing agenda. ALEC is the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC for short. It's responsible for creating model bills that are then passed by Republican lawmakers and governors. ALEC is powered by billionaires like the Koch brothers, who pump money into the organization and sit on its corporate board. This year, GOP governors and legislatures came up with at least 500 anti-labor laws that were crafted using ALEC legislation as templates. This includes the collective bargaining laws signed by Republican governors such as John Kasich in Ohio, Senate Bill 5, which is now being challenged, and Scott Walker of Wisconsin, both former members of ALEC. The ALEC agenda involves some pretty basic right-wing stuff: shrinking government regulations, union busting, which they're good at, privatizing education, which most of the country doesn't want, and other goals intended to benefit powerful corporations and the politicians who work for them. The ALEC bills and even ALEC membership has been kept pretty much under wraps for years until now. Thanks to a data leak, ALEC is exposed in this week's edition of The Nation magazine as part of a joint effort with the Center for Media and Democracy. More than 800 documents, including ALEC's model legislation, were obtained by The Nation and can be viewed at alecexposed.org and also at thenation.com. Let's turn now to the Washington correspondent of The Nation, John Nichols, and Lisa Graves with us tonight, executive director of the Center for Media and Democracy in the state of Wisconsin. Great to have both of you with us. This story is so important. We've got a crucial election coming up, but I think our viewers are going to want to know, John, what are the origins of ALEC? When did it start? How long has it been in effect? And who's behind it?
Well, it's a great question, Ed, and it is the place to begin. ALEC was founded back in 1973 by the losers of the great political battles of the 60s and the 70s, right-wing conservatives who had failed at every turn, and they were looking at the reality that America was becoming a more progressive country. Even Richard Nixon was doing environmental laws. So they decided to create a very secretive kind of backdoor operation to go into the states. And their model was a fascinating one. They linked legislators as members paying very, very low dues and big corporations as members paying very, very high dues, putting them together to write model legislation, but also to form an ideology, a vision of what could be done in the states. Yeah. And ALEC has been around now almost 40 years, but what's important is the 2010 election gave Republicans more legislative seats than at any time since 1928. And they've leapt, ALEC has leapt on that opening to begin to flood legislation into the state.
And Lisa, tell us about this template. How similar are the bills? How easy is it for a lawmaker on a state level to take ALEC material and put it in front of a legislative committee and in front of a body?
Well, we published over 800 bills from ALEC through a whistleblower. And those bills look a lot like many of the bills that we've seen popping out around the country. The fact is that all of these bills and resolutions virtually have been published in your state houses, in state houses across the country. But what hasn't been known before the publication on our site of alecexposed.org is that you could trace the origin of these bills back to ALEC. You could trace the origin of these bills back to task forces that ALEC has formed in which corporations and politicians vote on these bills before they are introduced in state houses across the country.
And Lisa,
so this template,
how is ALEC going to affect the 2012 run?
Well, that's a great question. I think that they are probably about ready to tout tremendous success in August at their conference in New Orleans, because so many of their bills have been making their way through the state houses on voter ID, things on the unions, things on teachers, issues regarding privatizing public education, the whole panoply of the privatization binge, along with extraordinary support for oil companies. opposing windfall taxes on oil company profits, opposing increasing revenue. These measures are really echoed in all of ALEC's documents, and they're echoed in the national legislature by ALEC alumni John Boehner and Eric Cantor. ALEC is tremendously influential.
Yeah, and John, what influence, if any, did ALEC have when it came to changing health care reform legislation in the heat of the battle?
I think that's a terrific question, Ed. ALEC was in the forefront of the fight against health care reform, and particularly of the fight against the public option. ALEC organized letters that were signed by hundreds and hundreds of legislators from across the country, including key legislative leaders. It was the backbone of the effort to pressure Republicans to hold firm against any kind of realistic reform.
Is there anything
and
on
also,
the left?
Frankly, it brought a lot of pressure on Dems.
John, is there anything on the left that would compare to this or parallel it in any way?
There is the Progressive States Network, which is very open and very public. It's not a secretive group like ALEC. The reality is there's no parallel grouping on the left, but there is a need for progressives to do something. Yeah. Not to do so secretly and behind closed doors, but to openly go out and challenge the right-wing agenda.
And Lisa, in the story, it said membership to ALEC. How do you get membership to ALEC? Just pledge allegiance if you're a public servant, say I'll do exactly what you want me to do as long as you line my pockets for re-election? Is that how it works?
Well, you know, legislators pay $50 a year. Sometimes taxpayers foot that bill for them. Corporations pay between $7,000 and $25,000 a year for one-stop shopping at ALEC conventions to hobnob with these politicians and basically push their wish list through these legislators. Yeah. Meanwhile, these right-wing legislators have a chance to have one-stop shopping for out-of-state funders for their re-election campaigns.
Great work by both of you. John Nichols, Lisa Graves, good to have you with us tonight. We'll do more on this because this is going to affect 2012. Next up, Fox News replaced Glenn Beck with a 5-person psycho squad. Very innovative. They're so focused on sticking up for W, they're pretending like 9/11 didn't happen. Psycho Talks next.